man, I hear that. Ding, 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 ding. I'm like, here we go. Here we go. My inner thug comes out. Whoa. My inner thug. See, I'm tearing
start
stuff
breaking
up.
stuff. Awesome.
That's how we do in thug life. And so I think I broke something here. It's so good. Yeah, that's perfect. Just bang her back in there. So just keep it real, folks. I'm excited. I just started thinking about my favorite song, my racing song.
In all honesty, as sick as I was running that half,
Yeah, for sure.
I finished it because I was running with Christy.
Absolutely.
Because I thought if I don't finish, she'll quit with me.
Right. You're always going to have to run with an amount of pain in your life. To live this life, you'll never be able to live this life without some amount of trauma and pain in your life.
Right.
You know, things are going to go less than desired, less than expected.
Yeah.
Hey, welcome to the table. We're glad that was really loud. Hey. Sorry about your ears. Welcome to the table. So glad you're with us today. And hey, it's been fun just connecting in this little community of table lights. I was thinking what we should call them: tabletops, toppers, the table toppers. But you have chosen the good place at the table, says Jesus. But glad you're with us today. Feeling a little bit of that caffeine drink kicking in there. So I'm here with my lovely bride, and today we're gonna have a little fun. Talk about lessons from the run, and if you could like make that into reverb when I say that, the run, something like that. So, anyways. Actually, it is. It's coming into probably for a lot of people don't know this. Coming into like real training season for marathons and running and things like that. And in case you don't know, we are not professional runners. But a few years ago, just looking for something to challenge myself and
for your 50th
for
birthday.
my 50th birthday.
Yes.
So I was 49 at the time and decided I wanted to do something for my birthday and thought I'd have a midlife crisis and go run a marathon. So that kind of began this process and just kind of have never stopped. And then Dana, of course, she got into it and ran a half marathon in San Diego.
Yes.
And
but I ran it at 51.
Yeah, 51. So she had quite a different experience. Got sick the night before.
Yeah, it was terrible. And gave up running.
And then she's like, nope, running makes me sick. And so she quit. And so I'm not going to do something that makes me sick. And no. But really, I mean, it was just, trained for it, gotten ready for it. Night before, I had like food poisoning or something.
Yep, it was terrible. I
think it was probably your friend Chrissy who gave you, slipped you something so that she could, stay in pace with you. I don't know what it was, but did that. And so you kind of have just decided that you'd find other ways to.
I did.
That wouldn't make you so sick.
Yes.
And but it is that season, and it's funny because a lot of our staff around Zion City now are jumping into marathons and half marathons, and it's the Cool Kids Club, I guess, all of a sudden. And so, but it is that season, and I literally just signed up for my next marathon. Yesterday was it? 2 days ago, some weekend. Saturday. Saturday. I just got to looking around one. So where I'm at in my whole thing, I've run a couple now. Got my time down to a 3:48 at Chicago, which is it's okay. It's not like professional runner. I'm not going to be at the Olympics anytime soon, since they run it in 2 hours. But my goal over the next period is to run a Boston qualifier time, which for my age group up to 55. Is 3 hours and 30 minutes just to qualify, which that is that's it's amazing because there's these graphics that are put out that less than 1% of people on the planet will ever run a marathon.
Yes.
And then inside of that they show you this, and Chris, he ran one, so you're a 1%er.
Good job.
You're a 1%er.
Good job.
And what about you, Isaac? You're not in? Okay.
Hey, could you
I ran 3 miles.
The stats for how many people do half marathon?
Yeah.
I'd like to know what percent I'm in.
Well, everybody who does a
Over
marathon
50.
does a half marathon.
I don't even like you anymore right now.
Everybody who does a full marathon automatically does a half marathon. So, but here's the thing. It's like, okay, let's think about this half marathon thing because, I'm going to get myself in trouble. Do you play half a football game? Come on, somebody, right? Do you play half a baseball game? So
wow.
She is not impressed.
I'm not amused.
Actually,
right now.
I heard a comedian one time that was cracking on that. Yeah, 5Ks are like, I
That's
don't
a
even
warm-up
understand.
run.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah. That's what I do, run to the refrigerator. So
Huh?
of people run marathons. Right. 0.01. That's in the world. In America, it's 0.1%, and then 0.01 in 0.05 in America. We're falling off
here.
What's
the half marathon stat?
I don't even think there is a statistic for that.
Hey, then make something up that
quickly come up with something.
Way awesome.
The special people just do half of it.
1%.
He's making that up.
I like you, Isaac. Isaac, you just outranked Chris.
Right.
At that,
You're out.
with that one
You're
statement.
dead to me. Anyways, anyways, the whole point is.
Sorry.
Then inside of this, there is an even small. They do it by like this graphic, an even smaller number that get a Boston qualifier for their age, and then from there it goes to like Olympic. I am not going to the Olympics, but Olympic and all this professional stuff like that. So for me, like at 50, I'll be 51 when I run this. Or not, I guess if I ran Boston, but to get a qualifier, I'd be like 52. So there's two ways I can do this. I figure I can either train harder and get faster, or I can just wait till I get older. I could just
either one.
I could run the thing when I'm 70, and you can do it in like 4 hours or something like that. So hopefully I can still run at that point.
What race are you running? I was trying to think.
Big Bear.
Big Bear.
Yeah, it's a fast course.
I was thinking Big Ben. I knew that.
Big Ben. I'm running the Big Ben. It's the American version of a London. It's called the Big Ben, but. No, it's Big Bear. And so it's a pretty good downhill. Like it's a Boston qualifier. A lot of people go there. It's a fast race, and so I'm gonna use everything I can to get myself under that 3:30. And
you can do it. I believe in you.
Yeah. Well, I've got some work to do for sure, but it is that season. And so yesterday I got up, took off, ran 8 miles. I've been running all year, staying in shape to some level, but now it gets serious. Now it gets real. And so.
But yesterday you promised me.
Yes.
In front of our family.
Yeah. What did I promise?
6-pack abs for days.
Yeah, I said it's. I said no, not actually. If you just run it off, but you can get close. But yeah, I was joking with our kids, and I was like, what that means? And they're like, what does that mean? Training season. I was like 6-pack for days. So apparently, my wife took that as a promise. Yeah. So so much pressure, guys, and so. I'm gonna have to be like, my eyes are up here. So anyhow, but anyways, so it's coming up. And one of the things that was really kind of cool that happened last time when I started training, I just had no clue. And I don't know if you would realize this. My wife certainly knows this, and some who know me well know this. Like when I get into something, I just like my son Taylor's like this. Like when I get into something, it's just like I go. It's
the learner in you.
Yeah, I go deep into it.
You need to find everything out.
Part of the enjoyment of the marathoning was not even so much the running, but learning how to do it well, because there's a whole science to it and systems. And because everybody thinks when you go run, it's like, just go run, dude.
Yeah.
And
it's not the Forrest Gump approach.
It is certainly not. It's like you can do that, but then there's this whole thing of it's like these counterintuitive things you do in training. Mm-hmm. Like I would assume any athletic sport that you're training for, that you do on purpose to develop certain parts of your body, your system, your strength, and that sort of stuff. So when I got into it, like I just really started like trying to, like now, I mean, even to this day, like it changes the way I monitor sleep for recovery, how I do rest, how I do, even caffeine. I've gotten rid of caffeine. After a certain time of the day, just so I can sleep, so I can recover well from all this training. And Chris too, as he's got a 47-ounce big gulp bang energy he's drinking over here. So I'm like, they didn't know they made them in like gallon keggers. So, but anyways, one of the cool things that happened is Wayne Drain, who is one of our kind of connected overseer types in the church, relational overseers. It basically just means he's a pastor of the pastors. He's available, but a very prophetic guy, very, very, I would say if there's a kind of a modern day prophet type, he's that. And we were just talking about this race. And of course, running a marathon is a lot like, doing CrossFit or being a vegan. How do you know if someone's running a marathon?
They tell you.
They'll tell you.
Yes.
So if they're training. And so we're talking about it. And all of a sudden in this moment, he kind of just pauses and says to me, he says, Waylon, I think the Lord is going to show you some things, in terms of just ministry and leadership and all of that. Because no doubt when you're out running these long runs and you're out for hours, you got time to think, and
Yes.
and especially if you're not using a lot of distractions in music or podcasts and things, which nothing wrong with that. But and so that's really what kind of started happening was I just found myself really relating a lot of the learning that I gained from running into ministry and life and things of that nature. And so I started writing them down. I just started like taking notes on them and figuring these are just helpful reminders for myself.
Yeah.
But also I think helpful. I've shared them in one instance. I've shared them with our staff very, very close to when I finished the New York marathon. And so we thought today, being the season, it's the season for training and all that stuff, that we kind of share some of those things that we have learned in our journey and running. And you don't have to be a runner for these to apply. So don't feel like if you don't run that, you got to shut it off. But I think that you may find yourself inspired to do something and I believe God's speaking. So the first kind of lesson I had to learn, and what happens is like any other kind of sport or thing in the world, there are 1,000 voices out there like telling you how to do it. And so I'm a learner. So I got a coach and got a program and all this stuff like that, started working through it. And the first thing that I really felt like really was applicable to life in general was this. They have what they call them easy runs. And 80% of your runs in training are supposed to be what you call easy runs. Yep. Which means they are the kind of pace that you run them and you're like, I could do this all day. There's like not a lot of effort to it.
You could have a conversation.
You could have a conversation. You could sing a song, without having to stop and gasp for breath. And let me just say this. I can imagine, though, I just want to say this in the onset of this. I can imagine there are plenty of running experts out there who are going to want to chime in and or contradict what I'm saying. And let me just say there's a million ways to get there. This was the general consensus of several sources that I dug into and my own learnings from this. But so the first real kind of truth that I learned in this is you've got to run slow to run fast. And that's so counterintuitive because I think in life we think, the early bird gets the worm. We think, first is best. If you're not first, you're last. To quote a great movie, a cool movie according to Chris. And but the reality is we do think that, like in ministry and in life, like if I'm not first, if I'm not just grinding all the time, then I'm not going to make it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there were times in my running, especially early on, when I just thought, if my first goal was to break a 4-hour marathon, and if my goal is to break 4 hours, I just got to run fast for 4 hours and just faster and faster. Unfortunately, that's not the way this thing works, not the way your body's built.
Right.
And so what I think for me, what it spoke to was just that reality of the need for rest, for Sabbath. Recovery is a major part of training. I know some guys that, and I'm not talking about elite people who do this for a living, because they have whole squads of people around them, aiding them in recovery, aiding them in nutrition. Their whole job is this. And so therefore, they're going to have a little more capacity over the decades they've been training. Right. But I know some people that just, they just run like crazy, and then they get hurt. And so the thing is, it stresses the body out, things like that. So there's got to be this recovery. There's got to be a rest time. There is a time, to run fast. And when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about the old statement people say, like, this is a marathon, not a sprint, right? As though somehow like a marathon is easier than the sprint, like this is a marathon. Like, oh yeah, we're doing the easy thing. I'm like, and I think you have to learn is that within every marathon, there are several probably intensified seasons of sprints. I mean, like they will tell you in the last 6 miles of your marathon, which is like the heartbreak, that they'll tell you 20 miles is when your marathon is made.
Yeah.
Everything you've done up to this point is for longevity. And I think this whole resting, Sabbath, recovery, things that we talk about in a spiritual realm is really about legacy, about how you end this thing.
Right.
Because you can go fast up front and just burn yourself out and have a horrible legacy when it's all said and done.
And be alone.
Yeah. At the end of the day, like everything you worked for, you thought you were getting, you turn around, you got nobody to share it with.
Right.
And so all of that, it works sort of counterproductively. So I think that, the first thing really I had to embrace was like, it's okay to run slow.
Yeah.
It's okay. And that's so hard because here's what happens is, and I still see it, whenever you pass somebody on the trail, and I have heart rate monitors that are, measuring stuff, and I run to heart rate more than time now. And whenever you pass somebody, it is intuitively, the thing you do is you speed up because you kind of have this, like, I want to look strong. I want to look fast. And
in front of the complete stranger.
In front of a complete stranger who's going to be there for less than 30 seconds and who's actually running faster than they normally run for you. You know what I'm saying? And I thought about, it could be someone on a bike. I mean, I've been on times where I'm like, I'm going to beat the bike rider. You know what I mean? Because it's just the thing that kicks in. And what I have to constantly be aware of is, like, you've got to slow down. And I think that's really helped even just in ministry. Like, running fast all the time is not healthy.
Right.
Running fast all the time is not productive in the long. There's got to be seasons where you just go, I could do this all day.
Yeah.
I could just keep this pace.
Yeah. You don't end up running your race.
True. Yeah, you're driven by so many things. And that's why I really resist the driven concept that some people embrace, because I just think it speaks. I don't see anywhere from a scriptural standpoint, I don't see us being driven. I think we're drawn. I think that, that we're led. Yeah. You know what I mean? I think that a lot of those things, but I don't, and maybe that's just me personally and my personality, and I know where I can go in terms of drivenness, with a high achieving personality.
Right.
Like, if I let that, I've had seasons in life where I let that get a hold of me and I just run fast.
Yep.
And you just burn yourself out. I mean, or you just burn out others.
Yeah.
Because you lose track of that pace of life. And so, it's interesting. There are several sprints within a marathon. There's several times you have to pick up the pace. That last 6 miles are like, okay, we're going 10 seconds faster than your desired pace, so you can finish strong.
Yeah.
It's funny because at the end of a race, one of the things that I learned to do was I stopped focusing on myself, because you're in a bad frame of mind typically. Like, your legs are hurting, your body's hurting, and you look up and you're like, okay, maybe you've run farther than you've ever run before at this point, and you look up and you're like, it's mile 21, and you're like, I have 5 more miles to go. You know what I mean? It's really kind of discouraging, and so they tell you that's the point to really start kicking in. But for me, it was interesting. Just side note, one thing is I stopped paying attention to pace, and I started chasing people down, like. Because that's one of the tricks they teach you is, like, find somebody who's ahead of you. It doesn't matter how fast they're running. Hopefully they're running slower than you, because if they're faster, you'll never catch them. But you chose poorly. You know what I'm saying? But even if they're walking, I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna run that person down. And so I'm catching them. And when I caught them, I was like, tag, you're it. No, I didn't. But what I would do is I would then find the next person. And I think it just speaks to that challenge that we have on certain times. But running slow, is a key part of this thing. Being okay with pacing seasons.
Yeah.
The next thing I really came to was this. I call marathon training, I call it adversity training, because really you're always training for something to go wrong. You try out everything that you're going to run in a race just to see if it's going to go wrong. Just to see if
you're going to get a blister.
If you're going to get a blister, if that's going to rub you raw. You want to fix all of that in your training so that when you're racing, it's a non-factor, so that your shoes, you know what I mean? You're wearing the shoes. And what a lot of people do on races is they change it up. Like, oh, I got some really cool new shoes that are way faster. And that's actually some truth, because, like, it's the only, I used to think as a kid, these shoes make me run faster. There are actually carbon plated shoes that you get an energy return, back as it relates to your running.
Yes.
But the thing is I think I just started looking for adversity, like what's going to break down. I was thinking about running faster. You remember the day I came home and you thought I was going to die. You thought
I
that
literally thought you were going to die.
Yeah. So I came in. And I think this is a testament to staying true to running your race and running it on pace. I had gone out one morning, and I'd been training for probably a couple of months, maybe at that point. It
was still fairly new.
Yeah, probably a month in.
You were still trying to figure out, even how to hydrate and all of those things.
So at this point, I got out one morning, early morning, and I just decided, like, you know what? Forget all this run slow business. I literally had this conversation.
I can laugh about it now because you're okay.
Right. I literally had this thought of like, you know what? I'm just going to, because there's this thing inside of you that wants to see if you can do it. And so you push yourself and all of this stuff. And so I literally get out there and I thought, you know what? Because I would always start off, you always start off faster, too fast. You slow into pace, maintain pace, when really what you should do is like just start slow and let it come to you. And I should say you do. I do. And so I got to this point where I was like, I remember I was crossing the bridge onto this trail. And I thought, I'm just going to run this, I feel good. And so I'm just going to run this thing like at this, whatever pace that I feel like I want to run. I'm just going to like, I wasn't even targeting a pace. I was just like, I was going. And what happened in this, it was a longer run. At those points, it was a longer run. It's probably an 8-mile run or so. And what happened to me about 6 miles into it, I had a lactic acid overload in my body, which is what happens when you run at that pace and you're not prepared for it. So everything just went sore, shut down, like I to the point of walking. And when I got home, I was just...
You were just white.
Like I was nauseous. I was, all of that.
You were just a grayish color.
Yeah, and I was out of it for a while. I had to come back and recover. But the reality is I think that was one of those key moments where I learned, like, number one, you're going to come up against adversity, but when you try to run too fast, too soon, or too far, like it's going to have some consequences.
Yeah.
Like there's going to be a price to pay for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But adversity training, there's never a perfect run. You look for the problems, and you learn how to address problems. And I think learn how to run in difficult situations. When things are not working. And that really showed up in my very first marathon, the New York. I got out on that marathon, and I made the mistake of wearing an Apple Watch to run with. And
we still love Apple.
Yeah,
we just don't run in their watches.
We don't run anything of any significance in them. But there's a big dispute out there about like what watch. And I was just like, I trained for 18 weeks with an Apple Watch, never had a problem. I go to New York and I'm dropped.
I created a fantastic playlist.
I did. I had worked on a 4-hour playlist.
Running playlist. I
had songs at specific times in the race. My go-to song. Don't judge me. There's a point in the race where I think it was just post. In theory, it was supposed to be just post 13 miles. I'm going to the last half of this thing. I've since changed it. I now move it to like mile 18 or 19 when I know I'm going to start hitting walls if I'm going to hit them. And it's Eminem's, what's the song? Lose Yourself. If you only got one shot. I mean, like it's like, man, I hear that. Dun, 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 dun. I'm like, here we go. My inner thug comes out. Whoa. Inner thug. See that I'm tearing
start
stuff
breaking
up.
Stuff. Awesome.
That's how we do in thug life. And so I think I broke something here. It's so good. Yeah, that's perfect. Just bang her back in there. So just keep it real, folks. I'm excited. I just started thinking about my favorite song, my racing song. So that's my song. Like, that's the one. Woo. You only got one shot, And I hear that thing, that little strumming guitar, and I'm just like, all right, here we go. People around me are like, what's going on with this guy? I'm throwing up gang signs as I'm running down the road. Just kidding. Joking. I don't even know gang signs. So don't shoot me. I don't know gang signs. So anyhow.
New York.
New York.
You get 8 miles in.
You brought up the playlist.
I did. It was a great playlist.
I was ready. I had it down. I was ready to go. And I'm in the zone. And I'm literally running, and 8 miles into this thing, I hear this, beep, beep, Apple. And I look down at my watch, and it says, you've got 10% left. And I'm like, most of the time with Apple, that means you got an hour. I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to get. And the problem with that was it wasn't just music.
No.
It was training. It was pacing. It was fueling, because I fuel based off distance, and, every so often you drink, every so often you fuel. So there's my whole strategy was connected to being able to pay attention to this thing. And it says 10, and I'm thinking, oh man, I may get like halfway through the marathon and I'm done. And literally 30 seconds less, I mean, it was gone. Within 8 miles, I was running completely blind. And so now all I can do is find a pacer, which I couldn't do in a crowd of 50,000 people. I never saw a pacer. Or I could just run to the people, run to how I felt, run to my training, or run to other people around me. And so the danger is like some are slower, some are faster.
Right.
And so I have the majority of my race to go completely blind. Mm-hmm. And so what I ran was I found some people that I kind of was watching and seeing where they were pacing, and I just tried to stay kind of with them. The end of the day, I ended up missing my goal by about 11 minutes first time. But I think things are going to happen in life. And I think part of what we have to understand is like learning how to take adversity in and just address it and move forward rather than letting adversity take us out.
Right.
You know, we talk a lot about emotional trauma and difficulties. And there's always going to be things in life that are traumatizing, challenging, heartbreaking.
Yeah.
You know, relationships that you know, break down. And the reality is if we allow those things to take us out, man, you're never going to finish this thing. You're never going to finish the race well.
Right.
And I think we have to learn. Nobody likes that. You know, I hated, especially for me, because I had worked for, 20 weeks to 18 weeks at least on like, here's my plan. And I had it down.
Yeah.
Never had a problem. Now it's gone. And I'm just like blind. Well, the funny part of the story was I got to the end of the race, and you got to understand, like, New York is like 2 million people watching, 50,000 runners. It's a zoo. It's like a party. I tell people it's like a party with a side of running. It was a ton of fun in that regard. Big marathons are fun just because there's like you're never alone.
Yeah.
Arizona, I run by myself and a coyote runs across. You know, out there it's just like people everywhere and they're cheering and you know, Chicago offering you drugs and things like that. You know, and so funny story. I end up on a social media influencers guy's video. All of a sudden, random this thing. I mean, you know the story, but this guy is acting like he's offering drugs to runners, and he's on the side of the road yelling like cocaine on a key. I don't think he really had drugs. I hope not, but he's being a funny influencer guy. And the funny thing is, I run by him, and I'm like, I look at this guy like, what are you doing? Well, that gets captured. Somebody in the church sees that video. Who follows this guy or whatever, and sees their pastor run by looking at this guy like, what's your problem, man? You know? And so, but in every of those situations, like adversity.
In New York, at the end of the race.
Yeah, at the end of the race. I'm sorry. The best part of the story. At the end of the race, I get done at the end of the race, and I'm done, and I'm pretty spent at this point because it was a warm race, 70-some degrees. That's hot for running. And so I get to the end of it. I'm cramping up pretty good. And all of a sudden, I realized, like, I have no way to contact my wife because I had my phone, or I didn't have my phone because I was planning on calling from my watch. And I get there, my watch is dead. I have no phone. I have zero way.
You couldn't even pay for a cab.
I couldn't do anything. You
didn't have a wallet.
I was like, because my Apple Watch, I was like, I had zero on me, and I'm like, I am literally stranded in New York City with 50,000 people around me, you know, and I didn't even care. I wasn't even like, oh, you're so scared. I was like, I could care less. I'll just sit here and they'll find me, you know. And I just went over there and just like, I was on like 75th Street or something in Park right there by Central Park, and I just sat there at the exit and I'm like, I can't get a cab, I can't get an Uber, I can't walk. I mean, we're staying in like Brooklyn or something. I don't know. We're somewhere in another borough, and or no, we stayed down at Times Square. Yeah. And so I'm like, there's no way. I'm like, I ain't walking nowhere. I just ran 26 miles. I ain't going nowhere. And I'm just sitting there like, I'm done. So thank God I'm standing there. All of a sudden there's a policeman. And I walk up to him and I was like, hey, can I borrow your phone? And he's like looking at me like, whatever, you know, forget about it. You know, he's like the typical, I don't know if that's whatever, but he's really like, I just said, listen, man, I don't have any way, my watch died. And so he was nice enough to give me his phone and says, yeah, I need to call my wife. She's looking for me somewhere in this madhouse. And so, of course, I call you, and you don't answer because nobody answers their phone to a number they don't know, even if it happens to be from New York.
It didn't even ring. Yeah. It goes straight to voicemail.
Yeah. So I call. I thought, I'm just going to leave a message, and eventually she'll find me or I'll die. One of the other is going to happen, and I'll just trust the Lord that, something's going to happen here. long story short, you eventually picked it up, called him back. He comes and gets me. You're able to find me. And but adversity is a part of it. And I think
we got you home. It all worked out well.
I lived. That's the moral of the story is. And I just think this, for people who are out there, sometimes you're struggling with stuff and you feel like this is how it's always going to be. This is the end of it. This is the big one, and I think some of it is you just got to understand, like, life is filled with challenging, adverse moments that, a lot of it, I believe, even in my faith, is like, is I'm training to just face these things. Scripture says, no pun intended, how do you run with horses if you can't run with men? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sometimes the adversity we face is the very thing God's trying to use to develop a strength in us to face even more difficult things. Nobody wants more difficult,
right?
But it's how we grow. It's how we, and today my running is, the need for music, the need for whatever, it's just so different today. Yeah. Because I've just learned to run. Like I ran it without it and, was present and in the moment for those, whatever the mileage was, that 18 miles left. So, I think a couple of these other ones. So I wrote down this, running is always better with other people.
It is.
You run faster and farther with other people. That's just always the case. I'm a big train alone guy. I typically tend to be more isolated in that regard. Like, no, I'm by myself. But I have found this every time I got around, somebody who I was running with, it brought out more in me. It just made me, a little farther, faster. It was funny. I was Braun and Chris were out there filming a video. We did it. We corresponded with like a drive for Christmas Mall that year, the first year I did it. And Braun, who's a young man in our church, great guy. He's kind of one of these guys that he's a runner. He's just built for it, and he's pretty fast little dude. And so he's out there one day, and they're filming me as I'm running. And this was still pretty early on in the training process, and I'd ran a large portion of my run for the day, and I'm sweaty and tired, and nothing was fabricated. It was all real. I have blood on my shirt and all this, and so as I look up, and I notice a funny moment. Braun is there, and Braun is running backwards, filming me while I'm running forward. And it kind of aggravated me a little bit. I got to be honest with you. And so
not even sucking wind.
Yeah, because he's just like jogging. And of course, I was going easy and slow because I was observing my rest and Sabbath. But but what was funny is like Braun's there, and I thought, this joker, because I'm like, he probably wasn't meaning it to be a punk 19-year-old, but I was like, this joker. So what was funny was, as he was running backwards, I just thought, I'm going to pour it on now. So I just start running faster and faster, faster. And all of a sudden you hear Braun like, hoo, hoo, hoo. You hear him making this noise because he realizes, like, I'm coming out of focus because I'm coming faster, And so he starts, of course, he picks it up and strides it out and all that. But it just made me think about how, with other people, you're always going to be stronger. You're going to be faster. You're going to be better.
You navigate the adversity better.
Yeah.
I mean, in all honesty, as sick as I was running that half.
Yeah, for sure.
I finished it because I was running with Christy.
Absolutely.
Because I thought if I don't finish, she'll quit with me.
Right.
And bless God, I was not going to be
the assumption is she might have just burned it through, but
she didn't. Yeah. She didn't finish.
It became about what was happening relationally more than it became about the mileage. And true to form, she was the one lying to you.
Yeah, she was flat out lying to me.
She kept telling her, like, it's just around the corner, like 8 miles to go. No, I see the finish line. It's
That's what she kept saying. Yeah, I can see it. I can see it.
She could see it in faith.
3 miles away.
Yeah, she was a bit out there, but you did it, and you did something you wanted to do.
Yep.
And you accomplished something, and truthfully, without that, for both of you, no matter what the motivation was, you were actually better by doing this thing together. And so I think it's in life, get people in your life, get people around you that you can just do some life with, and realize it's going to be better.
Yes.
We always say it this way: the highs aren't as high and the lows aren't as low.
Right.
And I think people are, well, why wouldn't you want your highs to be high? Because I think highs are sometimes deceptive. Like the good moments, when you look back, they may not be as good as you think they were. Like it was just it's good moments. Celebrate it.
It keeps you grounded.
Yeah, it just levels you out, keeps you moving, keeps you focused. And so I think that's one of the things. The other thing I wrote is your body will respond to the demands that you place upon it. And I think this really speaks to like even. I think it just speaks to like all of the work that goes into the preparation for these marathons that we've run. It's just like now I'm in a season where I'm going like, I want to hit this Boston qualifier. And there's a part of me that goes like, I don't know if that's, it'll eventually be possible just even by age, because I'll get there eventually. But if I'm 90 and they give me 18 hours to finish it, I will finish it. But the reality is like placing a demand upon yourself is so, I think, so important even in your faith.
Yeah.
And I took that out of just going like, when I said, hey, I'm going to run a 4-hour marathon, and I didn't hit it the first time. I came back to Tucson and ran another one a month later and nailed my goal there. And so just kept going. But I think the thing is like, if you don't ever place a demand on your faith, it never grows. You never meet it. There's something about, just saying, this is where I'm going to go. And if I don't make it, I'll keep going until I do make it.
Right.
And I think that just plays out in so many different facets of life, marriage, children, finances, businesses. Is like, at some point you gotta just say, you know what, this is where we're going.
Right.
Set a godly sort of vision, but at the same time pacing yourself. You're not going to do it overnight, but you're going to just do it the right way.
Right.
And so this is actually one of my favorite ones that I wrote down in the process of this. Every run has a purpose, and this was one of the massive shifts that I really came to. I used to think that in training, when I just would go train, it was more about just go run. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And now my approach is so different, because every day I start off with this idea of like, what am I trying to accomplish today? Mm-hmm. And that frames how I'm going to walk through today. Mm-hmm. And I think that, whether that's in a spiritual sense or practical sense, how we go to work, how we live in community, raise our kids, like, what am I trying to get done today? Right. What kind of relationship am I trying to build in my marriage? Mm-hmm. I think we just go through life with everything just kind of meshing and melding together, and nothing really. We just think like there's this overall purpose, run the marathon, but instead it's really like, what am I trying to accomplish today? Yeah. So I like literally today I have days like I will get up and I'll do all my stretching and preparation and placing some demands on my body. Get up, get out of bed, stretch yourself out. Mm-hmm. Those aches and pains, work through them. And then it's like, okay, what am I trying to accomplish today? And if I go, today is an easy run, which means this is the system I'm trying to build. This is the pacing I'm trying to do. So it helps keep me focused on why am I here versus getting caught up in somebody else's run or running without any purpose. Right. I think there's a lot of people who live their life just without real vision, purpose. Mm-hmm. And so they sort of, there's an old kind of an analogy that was put out story years ago about the church world. They pull up the rifle and they shoot it, and then they run down and see what they hit, and they draw a target around and be like, oh, instead of understanding like, this is what I'm trying to hit. Right. I know that within our church, we're trying to raise, biblical literacy and biblical adherence, and we're trying to, bring people into a presence of God that transforms lives. Yeah. There's something we're targeting. We're not just randomly showing up and doing church. Right. And so that drives what we do a lot of times. It leads us into, if you want people to understand the Bible, you're going to have to preach and teach and use the Bible yourself. And so it helps us to break it down into daily little segments. Right. What we're going to do. There's one of my days, I call it it's the hard day, Mm-hmm. And here's the thing. What I do is this, because my hard day is going to be filled with a lot of sprints, short-term sprints, getting my heart rate to 172 plus whatever, trying to stress my systems. I won't go as long that day. I don't need 10 miles like that. Right. I really just need, 5 to 7 sprints inside of my run that gas me out pretty hard. And even at times I can jog, rest. So it's just knowing what I'm doing that day. What's the purpose of the run?
And I think too, when we started employing that with our training, there was a sense of accomplishment every day. Absolutely. That we were able to build on. And so it wasn't this, in 6 months, I got to be ready to do X, Y, Z. It was, I accomplished today, so I know I can accomplish tomorrow.
The thing that's interesting that I find is this, I still use this today, is like when I am out, so I on my hard day, I have a path that I take that I end up in an uphill run sprint that I sprint up 5 to 6 times, hard as I can, for at least a 45 second to a minute. So, and that's what's funny is this. There's a statistic that says that the majority of people never sprint after 30. Like they never do it again the rest of their lives. And I'm just like, wow, that's pretty profound. Like you never use that gear again. So here I am at 52, and my sprint is probably not what it used to be, but I'm going all out, in that 5-minute mile pace or something for that duration of time. I'm not doing it forever. But here's what it is. What I find is really interesting is at the end, because those days I'm most likely to quit, be like, I ain't doing this today. Like, I'm done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I ran it 3 times. I'm not running it 5 times.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But here's what I remind myself. It's my hard day. And hard days are supposed to be hard.
Yeah.
And so I know that, like, just take your focus off of the big distractions that are happening and just go, I'm accomplishing this thing today. Yeah. Hard days are supposed to be hard.
Yeah.
Can tell you sometimes hard conversations are supposed to be hard.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be awkward. They're going to be. And we have to lean in to those awkward, hard moments to grow.
Yes.
It's a whole nother system is developed in me when I'm running hard.
Yeah.
And I won't spend as much time out there. It'll be a faster day, but it's a harder day.
Yeah.
And so I just know, like, honestly, for me, hard days usually Wednesday. I'm like, I wake up and I'm like, okay, I know what I got to do tomorrow. I don't have to think it over. I don't have to put a lot of thought into this. Today's a hard day, and I'm going to get through the hard day. And when I'm done, what you said, there's a sense of accomplishment. Like, I did some hard stuff.
Thing. Yeah.
I did hard stuff today.
Yeah.
And so and overall, what you're trusting is the overall training. I think that so speaks to, like, the spiritual elements of what God does in life. Like the overall work that God is doing. He's going to get me there.
Yes.
He's going to develop me. He's going to grow me. He's going to strengthen me.
Yes.
He's going to build me. 2 things, and I would just say, well, let me go through the last 3 real quick. I'm going to do it real quick. We talked about this. Less than 1% of the population will run a marathon this year. It was funny because when I first started to run a marathon, you were there a lot of times when this happened. Because you were obviously the guy, not the guy. You were the person that was saying, well, Waylon's training for a marathon or something like that. We'd have this conversation, and you remember people's responses. What in the world are you thinking? Like every time, nobody ever really said to me first. I'm talking first response. Now they would come to their senses and be like, oh, that's really awesome, man.
Yeah.
But every time, no matter how godly, devout, much my family loved me, people would be like, why are you doing that?
Right.
Like, and they would say it jokingly, and I wasn't offended because I probably would have said the same thing to people.
Yeah.
And what I really realized out of this is that when you go to do things in life, don't expect everybody to be excited about what you're doing.
Right.
Sometimes I think if everybody's not excited about what I'm doing, I must be doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
I need everybody to get on board with me. And eventually they did. I'm on a massive scale. They were my biggest cheerleaders and my biggest, like, man, that's awesome. So proud of you. Yeah. All of that kind of, and they still ask me, so what are you running now? I mean, they'll do that stuff. But it was so funny to me because I would say to people, hey, I'm running a marathon, for my 50th. And they would just look at me like jokingly. I mean, and some of them got a little harsh, like, why would you do that? Are you having a midlife crisis? My son said to me, Taylor, he said to me, he's like, Dad, some guys just go buy a Corvette for their midlife crisis, and so, and it's all jokes, but I realized this, like, if I'm waiting for everybody to be excited about what I'm doing, I won't do anything. Yeah. I won't do this.
So true.
So I can't let their lack of excitement become discouragement to me. Mm-hmm. And so I had made up my mind I was doing it. So there wasn't any change in. You're laughing at me.
I'm laughing at you because nobody's going to tell you what.
Yeah,
to do.
Well, once I make up my mind, I'm pretty much locked in. But once I had made up my mind, I wasn't going to change. But it was just interesting to me, like, man, why wouldn't people be like, man, that's amazing. Like, that's pretty incredible to think someone who doesn't really even run has decided to go do something and just challenge themselves.
Because you never did. You never were a runner. Not even in high school.
I did a little bit in, like, late junior high, early high school, a little cross country. Yeah. Here and there. Not very long.
Right.
That would not have been my deal. Right. Like, I'm not built for it, And, but it was just never anybody going like, man, that's impressive that you would just try to go do. I mean, it was always a negative based response of people like, and it just shows you, like, in the world, why are we so built to drag people down rather than encourage them? Like, go for it, man. Like, if you think you can do this, go do this. Like, even if you fail, it doesn't affect me. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to be cynical, but, like, So I just think if you wait for everybody to be excited, then chances are you'll never do anything, and you'll live in discouragement a lot of times.
Yeah.
And I think you just got to have this mindset of like, okay, I'm going to give it a shot.
Yeah.
So I hope that encourages some folks. I wrote down you have to change the way you think. The marathon is as much about mental as it is the physical. You know, your mental gives out long before your physical does. And that's the premise that I really walked away from it going like, there's a lot of times my mental has short-circuited things in life long before physical or spiritual even.
Right.
That my mindset about something kept me from saying, doing, going, believing for something far quicker than my spiritual, physical, relational sort of gauges.
Right.
And so I think that, you're going to have to change the way you think.
Yeah.
You're going to have to allow thinking to transition. You're going to have to go from, can I do this, which is real, to like, I'm going to do this, to I did this. And if you so choose, I could do it again, or I could do it faster. I could continue, whatever you choose.
But you can choose it. You can choose more hard things.
Yeah.
Take another mountain.
Yeah, exactly.
Do something else.
And I think that's the thing is like, I never intended like to run again. I really didn't. I mean, you know the fact. I was trying to do this thing, and I thought, man, when I'm done, I'm going to hang her up and just put it on the notch, and I'll walk everybody through my trophy cabinet with one medal in it and be done. You know what I mean? Remember that time? And
here you are.
And here I am a couple years later.
4 marathons later?
Yeah, this will be 4. But it's just, but there's something that I've learned, I've grown through it. And not only physically, but I just think even, practically how I'm living my life in this era, this season, this age. How am I going to go into the next one?
Yeah.
And I think it sets you up for a greater kind of level of success, I think. And then the last one I'd say is this, and it has to do with I was running in Irving, Texas, and I think you remember this, but we were at a hotel. We were out of town, and I would run wherever we were. If we were off someplace, visiting, doing. I mean, I ran when I went home to family. I'm like, I got to go find some place to run. I was that committed.
Yep.
And in this particular instance, I was actually pretty close to the race. I was within a few weeks of it, so I was feeling strong. I was really like. And this particular morning, I was out. I was running. I was running to my feel, and I was good with it. My body was now ready for this. Like I had trained and prepared. And on this particular street I was running on, there weren't really sidewalks, and so that's always a little dicey. It was very early. It was dark. I had lamps and all that stuff, but still, people don't pay attention. That's something else I've learned from the run is nobody pays attention to pedestrians. And so I can tell you how many times I about got waylaid out there. And in this particular day, I remember I was running, and man, I hit a pothole, and it was the kind of twist on my ankle that like. It wasn't a twist and like, ouch. I mean, next thing I know, I was sprawled across the street because I was running in the gutter a little bit, and there was a huge pothole. I didn't see it. Stepped into it. The next thing I know, hands, knees, scuffed. I am sprawled out on the street.
You were bloody when you came back to
the
hotel.
And I'm like, I was in so. But I tell you what bothered me more than anything was what I was really struggling with was I was slow. I'd done so much work for my race. I was so close to it. And here now I have this disastrous, painful injury that happens to me. And my first thought was, I'm not going to be able to do this thing now.
Yeah.
I thought I had hurt myself so bad, twisted my ankle so hard. I thought, how tragic. And that stuff happens for people. And so I felt the sting of falling for sure.
Yeah.
But I was more bothered, almost to the point of tears as I continued to hobble back to the hotel, which was fortunately only about a half mile away. And I thought I was so close to being done, and this thing happened.
Yeah.
And it brought me to it just put me out on the ground.
Yeah.
And what I kind of took away from that experience was simply this. Number one, you're always going to have to run with an amount of pain in your life. So the next day was supposed to be a long run. I remember this. And I made a mental decision, like, I'm not going to do that because I'm not ready, but I'm going to do something to help recovery. I'm going to get out and I'm going to move and jog a bit and all that. And what it made me think of is the fact that to live this life, you'll never be able to live this life without some amount of trauma and pain in your life.
Right.
Things are going to go less than desired, less than expected.
Yeah.
And I realized like a level of pain that is tolerable. Like every morning I used to go out in the mornings. I still today have some little tweaks and pains that like I know if I will run through them, it'll go away.
Yeah.
But I can't let that pain stop me.
Right.
But having said that, I would say this: if you're dealing with trauma in your life, you've got to stop and address it, or it's just going to get worse.
Right.
And for me that day, I was like, okay, I'm not going to do the 16-mile run today because I'll actually make this thing worse.
Yeah.
And I think there are a lot of people in ministry, in life, who have a lot of pain and struggles from their past, maybe, woundings, and they never stop to deal with them.
Right.
A little pain is normal. You're gonna have some pain. It needs to be, though, not a destructive pain,
right.
Where you can't function.
Right.
You need something,
Right.
You have to take a bunch of painkillers to be able to even be out there,
Right.
You have to have some kind of numbing out mechanism. And I think if you're in that place, it's like learning, like, I need to slow down, listen to my body,
yes,
listen to my heart, listen to my emotions, listen to the Spirit of God, and stop and deal with this thing.
Yes.
And so I stopped. I took a couple of days off, took some break, which is just so hard for me because I was like ready, man. I was like, I got a plan here. I got to work the plan. It's so hard, and
it was October.
It was close.
And you were running in November.
It was super close, and I thought, oh man. But I knew maybe just the Lord helping me. I was like, if I don't stop, I won't recover from this thing,
right? And
I'll actually end up possibly doing more damage to this. And interesting enough, so I just focused on recovery, rest, little bit of running here or there just to get the blood flowing again. And within a week, less than a week, 3 or 4 days, I was tender. I was manageable pain, but I wasn't in a trauma anymore, and I was able to go out and compete and finish and do this thing. And I just think it's so important that some of these little lessons that we've picked up through running. I know I've done a lot of talking today, but I think it's, these are important things for us to learn, and if they can apply to life. Maybe you're sitting there and you're like, I got this. I've gone through the divorce. I've gone through the loss of a child. I've gone through, loss of jobs, broken relationship.
Yeah.
I would just encourage you, like, we all have pain that we have to live life with.
Yeah.
But I think at some point you gotta just pause and slow this thing down and say, you know what, I need to get in some biblical community. I need to get with people. I need to run this thing with other people. Maybe that's a counselor.
Yes.
Maybe it's a pastor. I don't know who it is for you, but getting out there and getting somebody to help you in this process. And
so that you can run the race.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's like we always say, those wounds become scars.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And the difference is healing.
Yeah.
Because what was once a wound, when it's healed, becomes a constant. You'll never be without it.
Right.
There'll always be a mark. That's going to leave a mark. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it doesn't inhibit your ability, and there's no more pain attached to it that you have to constantly protect from being in relationship with people and never let them see that side of you.
Yeah.
And what it does is it just brings you to a place of, like, okay, I got to deal with this thing.
Yeah.
It's time to deal with it. Hey, listen, if you're numbing out, if you're in a place where you're medicating to try to get away, whatever that might be, that's a great indicator of, like, you are not stopping to deal with this situation. You're just taking more to get you through it.
Yeah.
And I'm convinced if I'd have done that, it would have taken me twice as long to heal, and it may have really affected my ability. I was within a few weeks.
Yeah.
I was definitely within a month, getting right for my cutback, slow down, get strong.
Yep.
I think it would affect. And the good news was, when I went out and ran on that day, it was a non-issue. It was completely not even there. There were several times where I just had, like, painful issues that came up in that run physically that I'm like, I got to go see someone. I went to a sports therapist guy one time. Like, I need you to help me.
Yeah.
And he started helping me, like, this is what it is. Because what's funny was, I learned through that a lot of times everybody always thinks there's this idea, like, well, if you run a lot, you're going to ruin your knees. And that's always the thing. Everybody says, well, I used to run a lot. And the truth is this, I suppose, if you run 100 miles a week for 30 years, it could have an effect, wear and tear on your body, for sure. But what I found out is this. I always found out the thing that I thought it wasn't. It was something else.
There's always a different route.
It was a different place in my body that was causing that problem. I was having a problem with the right knee, and I go to a therapist, sports therapist, and he's like, actually, you're overstriding, and it's your hip and your IT band. And so, we need to get you on a roller. And I'm like, what are you? I'm talking about my knee, bro. Like, what do you, like, I had a huge knot that would come up. I thought it was a cyst. I had all kinds of diagnosis that I thought it was. And he's like, no, here's what we need. It's your flexors in the front, of your leg. And I was like, what does that have to do with my knee? And he started explaining to me, like, well, when this is tight, it's going to pull your knee up into a position so that when you hit, it's going to create pain over time. And you know what's funny? Like, I was just listening. I liken it to like a counselor, just listening to someone going, okay, well, I'll give it a shot.
Yeah.
And I started getting on rollers and stretching differently, different parts. And sure enough, like in a matter of a week, it was gone. All that pain was just gone.
Yeah.
And so now when that pain kind of still rears its head at times, I know like, oh, I need to address that. That's what's going on. I don't need to go take a bunch of ibuprofen. I don't need to, do whatever. Like, I mean, it's totally different today because I know like, oh, you know what? I've been sitting a lot, so this is really tight. So I need to probably stretch that out more after I run or before I run a little bit, get myself in decent shape. So I just think it's like, man, pain is a great teacher if we let it be that way. It can be the thing that causes change. There's that old saying that says that when the pain of change is less than the pain of staying the same, that's when we change. Yeah. And so I think allow that pain in our lives to be the thing that drives us to getting healthy, getting whole. Yeah. Slowing down, running easy, running with people, and all that, I think will make a huge difference. So,
What awesome. Great lessons.
Yeah. Well, and you were a huge part of this too. Like you were always my cheerleader. You're always the one going, you could do it. And, even out there running, it's a tough thing when you're out there. It goes back to that togetherness. Like I'd be out there running and in all the races you've been there, on some level. Tucson's a little different because it's a stretch of no man's land, but but you showed up in places and you were there cheering for me, and that made a big, huge difference to me to know like, okay, I'm not out here by myself. Yeah. Like someone's waiting for me at mile marker 8. Someone's waiting at me mile marker, at the end of this thing, I know I'm looking for them. Yep. And because it's an emotional thing. I mean, it's wild how your emotions hit you when you get done with. I mean, when you finish a race and it just all hits you at once, like just the adrenaline of it all, and it's pretty wild. But that's another part of it. I think you've been there through all this whole process, just encouraging me, believing I can do it, and when I get my Olympic gold medal, I'll make sure that I'll dedicate it to you.
Thank you.
That sort of thing.
I believe you can do that.
Yeah. Oh, ye of little faith. Yeah. Only way I'm getting Olympic gold medals is if I buy it off eBay. So it's a replica, just like the real deal. So, or if I meet somebody who's trying to schlep one for something. So anyways, well, I hope this is helpful. I think, these are just some of the things we've learned through the years, and look forward to more learnings and more growing. And if this has helped you, let us know. If you think this has been helpful, jump in the comments and let us know how it's helpful to you. And we'd like to keep creating some content that's helpful and encouraging and strengthening to people in their walks. And maybe, who knows, maybe this time next year you'll be out running marathons. It could happen. If it could happen to a 50-year-old man, it can happen to anybody, I think, who has the heart to do that. So we love you, and just pass this on along to people that you might think might help them. And we'd appreciate you doing this. Help us to reach people. And we look forward to seeing you again. We have a ton of new content coming up with the table and guests. It's going to be exciting. A lot of great conversations on the way. So look forward to seeing you there. And until then, we just love you and pray that, man, just the blessings of God just overtake you. And we'll see you soon.